Welcome, everyone. This is a regular Board of Selectmen's meeting for Monday, May 15th. We're going to begin with a public hearing on the final draft of the town meeting warrant. So we'll begin with a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, available to the public on the town's website is the Selectmen's Town Meeting warrant for June 13th, 2023. And we'll hit the highlights. So I'd also like to disclose that the town manager has put forth a narrative of the 2024 fiscal budget that is also available at anyone's request. The town meeting warrant is set up the same as it is every year. We begin with on page 1 with the normal greetings, the business articles. The business articles carry through to page 2. The interest rates that you see for article, B9, for article B2, I'm sorry, on page 1, those are all set by the state as far as what the maximum they can be. The business or the B articles end on page 3, and article B20, this is shall the town vote on all warrant articles by secret ballot at the 2024 town meeting, which is the town meeting a year from now. Selectman Schaefer asked that if there was any possible way to reword article B20 so that the public was clear that it wasn't an in-person town meeting. And legal's been asked to look at this at least 3 times, and Joe reported back to Joe that this is the appropriate wording for folks to vote on whether to continue with the secret ballot vote on the selectmen's warrant. Article B21 is a new warrant. This is asking for our voter approval to spend the rest of the coronavirus funds, the ARPA funds, on a necessary system for the wastewater treatment facility, and that has been something in the sewers capital plan is for this SCADA system. So the 68,621.61 will deplete the ARPA funds, and they had to be spent by the end of 2024, I believe. The biggest jump is in Article C1. That's our reserve accounts. Last year's amount was 180,000. This year's requested amount is 395,000. The prior 2 years, we were able to offset the requests using some of the Chick Hill revenue funds. These reserve requests come from the department heads, keeping in mind their capital, capital expense plans coming up over the next several years. So that's the biggest town budget jump that we have control over. And that's takes care of page 3. Page 4, under the expense budget articles, it's from selectmen through tax increment financing. The request is $1,057,053. think everything except finance saw an increase, although a decrease in town hall. We shifted a position out of the finance department. This position was renamed, there's a new job description, job title last year. It's the customer service position, so that has been moved under administration, which is one of the increases under the administration budget. So just a shift in personnel there, and property casualty insurance increased 13,206. Anything else the selectmen wish to add to this EX1 through EX10? Page 5. We've got articles beginning with EX11 through EX16. We have worked in a 5% pay increase for our non-union employees. We've got two new union. We've got two different sets of employees. There's one one that's still in negotiations. The other union group has reached an agreement. We just don't have that to sign. So that will be public once that agreement is signed. But you'll see fire hydrants, which that rate is set by the water district, increased 21,323. I'm sorry, that's EMS under D. That increased 21,323. Our ambulance services, that's a contract, and so that increased. And then the fire hydrant rental increased 12,034. So those are the two increases that the town cannot negotiate. We have got articles EX17 through EX25. Okay. So a slight increase with highways through public services director. Probably the biggest question that will be raised is, why is the public services director at 0? We are not hiring a public services director during this budget cycle. We are hiring a Parks and Rec director, which under E is the reason for that increase. Slightly lower salary, and worked in with the Parks and Rec budget. So that is the biggest shift with this set of numbers. On page 6, we've got it ends the expense articles that pertain to the town of Rangeley budget. The donation request articles, they are presented to the town by petition. If they're in excess of $5,000, if they are under $5,000, they just simply fill out an application and submit that by the deadline. There is a slight decrease in the donation request this year by $4,000. $220,011 for donations, down from $224,711. And so the donations take up all of page, half of page 6, all of page 7, into the top of page 8. The revenue budget article, the selectmen spent a lot of time discussing this article. We increased the unassigned fund balance amount from $275,000 last year to $500,000 this year. So an increase of $225,000 that the selectmen requested be brought forward from the unassigned fund balance, so to help offset the increase in spending, and also to offset the amount needed to be raised through taxation. The other item is the other half of Article RV1, or the estimated revenues. The selectmen increased through revenue line $304,800. So last year, the revenues were $1 million. Estimated revenues were $1,063,675. And with the help of the treasurer, the selectmen are projecting a revenue amount of $1,368,475, which brings a total increase in the RV1 article of $529,800. That won't extra, that won't need to be raised through taxation, which I believe, Joe, offsets the increase of the town budget.
Considerably, yes.
Yes.
There is still a difference of $104,000 year to year. So the municipal increase is 2.2%.
Okay.
Once you factor all that in.
All right. So so as Joe said, the municipal portion is 2.2%. You know, we did just receive the school budget, which is on our agenda. And I believe the county tax has not yet, the increase on that has not yet been determined. Joe said there's a pending discussions. It's potentially a 25% increase.
Potentially, Madam Chair. There were 3 groups reviewing that budget, you know, administrative, the elected folks, and then the budget committee, and the average is 25,000. I don't know whether that's where they'll end up. They have a meeting coming up, but just for the sake of painting a picture of what the increase could be for the town in its taxes, I think we picked 25%. So the total amount estimated for the town is 6%. And the municipal portion of that budget is up 2.2%, but when you include education and the county, it's 6%.
Okay.
Estimated. When we know the county's numbers, we'll know for sure what the actual increase is.
Mm-hmm. All right. And then, yes, Shelley.
What was the percentage of the school budget? Their increase, did you get that?
Don't remember.
I didn't see a number in there.
But, well, it's on our regular meeting.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
it's a-
Yeah. So actually, it might be in here. It
Is
might
that not it on the sheet?
8.4%. Okay.
fuel was the other big one.
Yep, the fuel expenses were another hit to project for any, well, and utilities in general. But we, we kept the, increase, down to 2.2%. I think at one point, when we started off, it was a 6% increase with the town budget from last year, and just with a lot of talk, a lot of work with the town manager, the board of selectmen worked it down to 2.2%. And again, working with the treasurer on the potential, the projected revenues coming forth, that RV1 article, it's important to realize the revenue component of the town budget, not just the expenses. So that is the warrant article. I'm sorry, that is the Selectmen town meeting warrant in a nutshell. Thank you, Shelley. Shelley just, the ordinance articles, thank you. There are two ordinance articles, and they are the last two questions that folks will vote on. Shall the voters of the town of Rangeley repeal the current chapter 38 zoning ordinance and replace it with the proposed chapter 38 zoning ordinance? And this has been, chapter 38's been in the works for a couple of years, with the Board of Selectmen and jointly with the planning board. And the only piece that didn't get updated would be the sign component, and that will be worked on this summer and fall for a potential November vote for the sign ordinance component of zoning. And then the second ordinance article, shall the vote of the town of Rangeley adopt the proposed moratorium for commercial solar arrays. And so if approved, the moratorium is for 180 days. It doesn't allow any commercial solar projects during that period of time, while a commercial solar ordinance is being worked on by our ordinance committee. And if work needs to continue after the 180 days, then the selectmen can vote to extend that an additional 180 days. But that's for commercial solar arrays. Thank you, Shelley. Any questions, comments? Like I said, Joe's compiled a nice narrative and a budget estimated summary sheet as well that's available to the public. We'll move into our regular selectmen's meeting. I need that yet. That can be signed afterwards. Thank you, Nancy. I appreciate it. All righty. All right, we'll call the regular selectmen's meeting to order. We've got a quorum present. Selectman Schaefer is at his daughter's ball game. He'll arrive once that's over. And Sam is on vacation, so she won't be arriving anytime soon for today's meeting. Conflict of interest disclosure. If at any point during the meeting a selectman finds they have a conflict of interest with any agenda item, please disclose that to the Board of Selectmen. Adjustments to the agenda, Joe?
Madam Chair, I would recommend, since we have guests with us tonight, Nancy and Paul with us, that the board consider moving them up to this point in the meeting.
So this would be
They're under number
10 under new business. Yes, so all right, let's let's move
Thank you,
the,
Joe. Not that I don't find this fascinating, but I'm sure we can.
no, let's, yeah, let's, so under, in number 10, under the high peaks. Let's see here. National Wildlife Refuge Opportunities, so we'll shift the proposed High Peaks Wildlife Refuge from 10 to adjustments to the agenda under number 3. So welcome.
Thank you. I think you all know me, Nancy Carlson. This is Paul Casey, who's the manager of the Ondega National Wildlife Refuge, and I'm right now working with Paul to assist him on this project. And I think, Mark, did you get a copy of what was shared with the? You did. Okay.
Just this evening.
Okay, all right, so I brought extra copies because I didn't know if there might be like crap in the room
Yeah,
we could
yeah.
share info with, but, is there anybody, nobody's on the line either?
Just Tracy.
Okay. Well, we just wanted to kind of brief you folks on this opportunity that we're pursuing. You probably saw in the Highlander, there was a press release. We're having what's described as a scoping workshops. One is tomorrow at the Masonic Hall, and one is in Farmington and run up on Thursday. And basically those are part of our scoping process, which is to gather information, to share information, and to get feedback and input from folks about this opportunity. If any of you can come to that meeting, but the one either here in Farmington, there'll be lots of maps and posters and things to kind of explain in more detail. But I just wanted to give you a little bit of background so we make sure you kind of understood what this was all about. So what we're proposing is a new National Wildlife Refuge in the High Peaks region, which I'm sure you probably all know kind of what we define loosely as the High Peaks region. It's huge. I think some outlines of it, which are kind of fuzzy depending on where you draw the boundaries, but some 400,000 acres or so. It includes the reason for the name is that it includes the 10 of the 14 highest peaks in the state of Maine are right here. And that map, I think that I shared with you, kind of has little diamonds on it that show, or triangles, yeah, that shows where those peaks are. And the Appalachian Trail, not surprisingly, runs kind of diagonally across that area too, because of the high elevation area that it traverses. So the focus of this particular opportunity is along kind of that High Peaks range surrounding the AT as it cuts across the High Peaks. And the focus, not surprisingly, also is fish and wildlife habitat. Everything from the high elevation habitat for things like Bicknell's thrush to the lower elevation watersheds that support our brook trout and Atlantic salmon. So that's kind of the rationale, is to look at that habitat that's very important and worthy of protection. So what we're doing right now is looking at that broad landscape, and we've kind of drawn a little oval on that map, a big oval, a fuzzy oval. That's why we made it a dotted line, because it's just a study area. So it's just kind of where we're concentrating our attention, our focus on what might be the best location for this proposed refuge. And what ultimately comes out of this scoping process is to define that, to zoom in on where this is the best fit. And then an acquisition boundary is created, which allows the refuge, the Fish and Wildlife Service, to acquire either land in fee or conservation easements within that boundary. So this is the kind of public, one part of the public process, the first phase of the public process, where we're going out there and saying, okay, here's this area that we're looking at, here's why we're focused on it, and we'd like to get input and feedback from people about where is the best fit for this. And also, of course, we're looking at the resources, where are the important habitat areas that warrant that kind of protection. And, you know, there's a whole range of things. I think I maybe sent you a copy of frequently asked questions. And the map and the overview document. I don't want to overwhelm you with too much stuff here, but, you know, that's just kind of the background of what we're doing. What we're looking for is input. The next phase of this scoping process is to develop what's called a land protection plan. At some point, I'll let Paul here to jump in and elaborate, but it's essentially a plan which then defines, okay, what do we want to do and where do we want to do it? You know, where should it be? And then how will it be managed? And primary goals, in addition to habitat protection for a refuge, are also public access. So it does guarantee public access for the traditional uses like hunting and fishing, other recreational activities, snowmobiling. You know, we have to work with those trail groups to figure out where those trails are located. And that's the other outreach we're doing is to some of those stakeholders, like, you know, people who hunt or fish or who snowmobile or ATV or bike, or horseback ride or whatever, you know, whatever, just hiking, bird watching, trying to figure out what's important to them, either for areas to be protected or areas where they, you know, use this ground and want to make sure they can continue to do that. So that's the input part. Once the plan is developed, so this, I want to make sure everybody understands this is the beginning of this process. So it's not like we're walking in and saying, here's what we're going to do. We're walking in and saying, here's the area that we're interested in, and we're trying to get input. We develop this plan with this feedback from folks, and that will probably happen over the next, what did we say, 3 months, 3 months or so, where there'll be more interaction with people after we, you know, get input. And then once the plan is developed, then that goes out for more public review and input before it would finally get approved. So that's kind of in a nutshell why we're here and what the process is. And we just wanted to make sure, you know, we had the press release out there, and then we start hearing, you know, oh, it's this and it's that and it's that. And we just want to make sure we kind of have a common understanding of what we're proposing, why we're proposing it, and how the process is set up to work. I don't know, Paul, if you want to jump in.
Well,
on some
I guess
other
the big
things.
thing
Yeah.
is, are you familiar with what a national wildlife refuge is?
Your question.
I think it's important to know, we're part of the Department of the Interior,
Mhm.
okay, and we're under the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And the National Wildlife Refuge System is the largest network of land set aside primarily for the conservation of wildlife. And I try using that word conservation of wildlife because we are an active management organization. Okay, because of the limiting habitat that the refuge system has, we actually have to produce more in the refuge so that we maintain population and things like that. So we actively manage our refuges. Basically, the situation on the federal level here is when we mention this planning process, it's going to go hand in hand with the National Environmental Policy Act NEPA requirements. So in NEPA, the first step is scoping. Go out and you basically ask folks, you know, what do you think of the idea? What is important to you? What is important for wildlife? Okay, and then you go through developing a draft plan that will go back out to the public for review and comment. From that, you develop a final plan in the end. There'll be multiple alternatives for comment when the environmental assessment comes out as far as that goes. The key with National Wildlife Refuge System is we have organic legislation that says our priority is wildlife first. Okay, that's our highest priority. But then when they passed the Improvement Act, they made it very clear. We want you to facilitate certain activities on this refuge. Okay, and that would be the hunting, the fishing, wildlife observation, photography, environmental education, and environmental interpretation. So many of our refuges are open. I'm the manager over at Bagog Refuge, and I'll be the lead on this process over here in the High Peaks. So I'd be the main contact person with regard to this project.
Questions, I guess, maybe if there's anything that you folks want to jump into. So just so Mark is the scribe who writes for the Highlander, among other things, probably. Yeah, and the public.
How many acres are in this fuzzy oval?
That fuzzy oval is about 200,000 acres. So out of the 400,000 high peaks, we kind of zoomed in on 200, and then we're gonna zoom down further from that after we
Do you have
identify.
a goal?
What would, you know,
We don't have, but this is a NEPA process, so we haven't identified a goal. There will be an alternative that says we don't need a refuge.
so anything from
so-
0 to whatever, maybe a
Exactly.
couple of other alternatives.
So this is our first opportunity to start hearing what people are interested in the community. Thank you.
And so it looks like there are, you have a couple of approaches. It's either a conservation easement or you're able to
Correct.
purchase. And so there, I mean, so there could be a piece of property in the middle of this conservation area where you have no jurisdiction over. Is that correct?
Correct. Service has a willing seller policy. So somebody needs to be interested in selling to it. So if we do establish a refuge, all it will do is establish an acquisition boundary that allows us to talk to people that are within that. And then it's a willing seller process after that.
So it doesn't have to, also doesn't have to be contiguous, correct?
Correct.
So it doesn't have to be a block. It says
Right,
it's
okay.
here. It could be, okay, this over here is really important, that over there is really important, that is important. So they can be kind of a compilation of multiple parcels. And yes, it can be, and I think we've talked about maybe even as much as 70-30, 50-50, I don't know. There'll be a ratio of easements to fee, and that will really depend on the landowner. Now, we have some landowners, and same with my work that I do with the trust, some who want to just sell their land and be done, and others who want to keep their land, but they want to protect it, so they put an easement on it. So that will be kind of at the discretion, really, of what the landowner chooses. And as Paul mentioned, so this establishes the boundary. And I think in that overview, it mentions this doesn't happen overnight. It probably happens over maybe even a decade, because it's totally dependent on when or if the landowner is interested in selling their land. So that's why we call it an opportunity. It's really just creating an opportunity for landowners, if they choose, to sell their property for conservation, and for the public to acquire some interest in the property for access to conservation. But it doesn't happen overnight, and it's just as it comes up.
Looking at this whole, aren't there residential neighborhoods?
So that's another really good question. So we were trying to figure out how do we zoom in. We didn't want to zig and zag around, oh, there's houses there, and there's no houses there, and there's houses there, and it could be a very strange looking shape. So we just did a novel, and we recognized, yeah, there's like massive development in some parts of that oval that we would totally go around. The service is not interested in buying anything with buildings on it, or even areas where there's a lot of subdivision. The primary focus would be larger lots. But the good thing, I think, in my mind anyway, from conservation, the work that I've done and work with other conservation partners, is this does allow us potentially to connect some smaller parcels. If there was 100 acre, most of the big conservation deals that are 1,000 acres, 5,000 acres. And so those little ones that are maybe 100 acres next to 100 acres, next to 100 acres, that have value for access and for wildlife, that could happen here if it was appropriate. They can be put together, but yeah, no, there's no intention at this point, there's no intention to buy anything in it. So rather than carve around those, now I also have maps, which at some point, we'll be talking with landowners, and we can see where those development areas are and work around them.
So when we call that a study area, we'll be looking for the habitat that is best for the trust species the Fish and Wildlife Service is responsible for. And 9 times out of 10, that is not in the development. That's going to be the area that has not been developed or is in good shape. So that's how we would prioritize looking at the areas that we would think rise up to the level of a national wildlife refuge.
The other thing we have for some, and that doesn't show on those maps, but the larger maps we have has things like where is the priority IF&W brook trout habitat? Where are the watersheds for the Atlantic salmon? So we have those features on our map, on one of our big coastal maps. And then there's a beginning with habitat map, you're probably familiar here in Rangeley with beginning with habitat, and you have those maps here. That shows, and it's for a variety of species, but you know, things like big-nosed thrush would be one of them. So we kind of have layers of things that we're looking at, and some properties will rise up because they have, you know, multiple values that the refuge is interested in, and multiple values that the public is interested in for conservation and recreation. So yeah, that's the process we're in right now, is to narrow that down.
So then once, you know, say you're given a conservation easement, you know, for, you know, someone's 200-acre parcel. So do you then, you're the red light or green light regarding access and use of the property for recreation and
No,
hunting?
If it was an easement, it depends on what that individual would sell.
Okay.
On an easement, if that individual retained recreational rights, they would have the recreation.
Okay,
rights.
okay,
Yeah, we would have to buy those rights in order for us
right.
to manage it.
So
Yeah,
this,
so it depends on what the easement says. Some easements that, you know, I've worked on in conservation will specifically say, this easement includes the right for the holder of the easement, which would be the service, to, you know, allow whatever recreation use it is.
Mhm.
Or it might retain the rights, the landowner might retain the rights to decide, you
okay,
know, whether there would be access. So in an easement, it's a little more gray. It depends on
okay.
the landowner's willingness and interest. In the fee pieces, I think that would all be publicly accessible. That would be part of the services management.
Nancy, are you in
Yeah.
touch with Joe Higgins with the snowmobile program?
Okay, so yes, I've had a number of conversations with Joe Higgins and Brian Bronson and Rex Turner. I think they're coming to one of these meetings, I'm not sure which, but we have data, GIS data on all the recreational trails, hiking, snowmobiling, ATVing, biking, paddling, all those layers because of work that we've done with the High Peaks Initiative across the whole area. Joe has data, and I've given him all the detailed maps, and he's working on trying to figure out, because we want to, as we look at properties, we want to make sure we know what's on those properties or an area, and you know, what uses are currently occurring there. So we're working closely with them. And there could be opportunities where we can permanently secure existing corridors, which is important. It's very important to the state right now, particularly, you know, the motorized corridors, which are harder to manage. Harder to manage and constantly, often being moved and sometimes closed.
Mm.
So that's the other opportunity I see here, is to work in partnership with that recreation community, and particularly the state of Maine, to see if we can identify some real high value corridors, recreation corridors that can be secured through this. You know, we'll be part of the puzzle. We won't secure the whole thing, but in partnership with other conservation entities, we might be able to work toward that goal of securing those corridors. They very much want to do that, and it's expensive, as you know, I'm sure, for these clubs to have to relocate trails all the time.
Right.
So if we can help minimize that, we will.
We do have snowmobile trails that go through Wabaga National Park. That
What's
would be-
important on that, and that's part of why this scoping process is so important, is so that we know where those are. And we know, okay, there's a trail there, or we might even need to know, okay, is that trail been moved, or does it need to be moved? Or, you know, is there an opportunity that we're missing here? So it's important to get all of that data into the planning. It's harder after you've done the plan to come back, and that's what happens sometimes. That's why I'm really wanting to get out and talk to people in advance of this, because what happens, and you see it here in your work here, you have a hearing and you open it up for people and you say, come and tell us what you think, and then they don't come, and then you do it, and then they yell afterward and say, well, wait a minute, why did you do that? Because I didn't think you should have. And you know, sometimes you really have to get out there and make sure they get involved. So that's why we're really pushing on this preliminary scoping, is to get that information.
Joe?
So if you have trails that are on there, I mean, there's a lot of people that do boondocking throughout the woods when they go snowmobiling and stuff. Will that hinder that if they from doing that in the future?
those are hard to say, because we need to look at the habitat that it will be going through.
Mhm.
What we look for is specific habitats that are important for wildlife, and generally, there's not an effect in the winter, but a deer wintering area would be a concern of that. So what we do is we relocate trails if it's impacting wildlife, but we maintain the connection is the key thing that we commit to. As far as that.
So if there's a trail and it turns out there's an issue with the trail, then you find a way to go around.
Yeah, there's areas that you can do it that won't have much impact on wildlife, and then if you do it, you're significantly impacting wildlife. So we'd work with the clubs to say, you know, can we push it over this area as opposed to.
Right, but trails are different than people that go out in the woods looking for moose horns and deer horns and all that other stuff.
Oh,
with
yeah.
their snowmobiles, so.
We do have collecting on the refuge.
Yeah.
I'm big on that people go out and go off trail. Some of the areas is not that a problem if it's a forested area that is a deer wintering.
Mhm.
It's not a concern, but the state and the service says that we made a commitment to the state to help with their wildlife. The state has jurisdiction over deer.
Right.
Okay, so we help them out, okay, with the deer wintering areas. Other than that, I don't see areas that are greatly impacted by.
So it'd be the same kind of goals that the state
Correct.
currently has, particularly for deer, for snowmobiling anyway, particularly for deer wintering, would be the primary impact of it.
But this is what we want to get, so that we get it down in the scoping, so we address it while we're.
There are a lot of people that think you're gonna take away their hunting.
I
I'll tell you
know.
that right now.
Yeah, no,
Well, and you know,
I will
I,
tell you that right now.
yeah,
one of the things that I printed out, I don't think I brought it with me tonight, but we'll have it tomorrow, I can email it to you. The Ambegog Refuge, right on their website, has their hunting policies, their whatever processes. And I think people would be surprised if they just looked and saw what that information is, because it largely follows the state of Maine.
and that is in the Refuge Improvement Act. They want us to facilitate hunting and fishing.
Right.
So it's a
Okay, on
directive
that. So we're not,
For the service.
if we have to close it down, it would have to be something like an endangered species. Right there, okay?
Right.
On that, so, almost all of our national wildlife refuges are open.
Mark?
What if you get feedback during these sessions, people tell you they really don't want a national wildlife
I
refuge?
fully expect to have some people say they don't. want
Right,
it.
will that affect you at all?
Well, no, we'll take that into consideration while we evaluate, of course.
Yeah, at this phase, it's input. And input to the plan. But at some point, then there'll be like Paul said, there's a review of the plan, and one of the choices is no action.
Right.
And
Who
if there's
reviews
just
that?
overwhelming, what's that?
Who reviews that?
That'll go out to the public. That'll go out to the public, and they'll have a public meeting where people can come in and provide comments. You can also write your comments. I really, again, you don't have to attend the meeting. On one of those papers, there's
Yeah,
a
we don't-
website.
Did I
Not a
did I
website,
give
but
you,
an
did I
email.
give you one that has an email on the bottom of it?
Yeah, we have that.
Does it have the email on it? Yeah.
So you can submit your comments electronically right to that email site, and we're gonna be putting up a website, I think tomorrow, that people would be able to go to get information as it progresses. So as we progress through this, we'll put it out, and anybody can be able to follow it, even if they don't want to come to it.
So one of the comments too that I've heard is that Acadia National Park, there's no hunting allowed there. So what's to prevent it from happening up here?
Well,
That's
we're
just,
not, Acadia is part of the National Park Service,
Okay.
not Fish and Wildlife Service.
okay,
And they don't have the same organic legislation. The Refuge Improvement Act specifically told us, we want you to facilitate hunting and fishing. So that's a directive to us. With parks is different
Mhm.
on that. I know we're all in the federal family.
Right.
Okay, but we have specific objectives by agency, and ours is wildlife comes first. The fact that wildlife comes first, we actually write the hunting regulations for waterfowl. We're managing the population on a national level, our agency,
Mhm.
okay, and that's basically, when we buy land with migratory bird duck stamp act, percentage of that land is required to be open time. Okay, so we facilitate on refuge, so that is a difference. I fully expect to hear from folks, well, you know, the fence, okay, and everything's the same, you know, and And that's just, it's not true. And also keep in mind, we're an agency that's influenced by the public. Okay, so clearly if something isn't going the right way, there's ways of getting just your federal senators and representatives to respond to us.
So when you say it's open to the public, does that mean it's open the way it is now, that there's no gates, people can drive on the Logan Road network like they do now?
The only gates that, I can only give you an example that what you do in a pig, because there's no refuge here. But our refuge is open to access and all logging roads are open to access.
So all the roads.
The
around
only
company
time that
gates
it's
and stuff
not,
are
yes,
still
the
open?
only ones that.
You maintain them?
We maintain them, we do, and we do gate them in the spring for mud season. Because then it costs us to grade them when somebody goes in there and ruts up the road. But as soon as mud season's over, they're open, you're allowed access through all the roads that we have.
Thank you.
So at what stage of this process do we find out what impact there will be on the public use? I mean, I understand that you're saying public use is it's part of the process and you want to maintain access to the property in public use, but you're also making some comments that make me understand that there will also be some changes. If it's this vast piece of property, there's likely going to be changes that impact some of the public use. So at what stage do people get told what impact on the public use?
Well, that's why we want to hear from everybody now, so that when we write the environmental assessment and the land protection plan, all that's in that plan spelled out where everybody can read it and comment on it. So that's so that and the comments, the input is not over like just after these meetings.
Yeah.
If you come up with something a month from now, when we're halfway into, right, please provide it. Then we incorporate it so that when we go out to the public with options, there'll be multiple options, and the impacts of those options are gonna have to be addressed by us and provided for the public, for you to be able to look at and feel how you feel about it and provide comments to us to make modifications.
So when there's a plan, the plan will identify the proposed location or a proposed location for this refuge. And there should, we hope, the plan, and right now we have it, I think, data layers that show, okay, there's a snowmobile trail on that piece over here, or there's an ATV trail over here, or there's a hiking trail over here. And we'll know that when we make this proposal, so people can say, okay, I currently snowmobile there, I'll still be able to snowmobile there. Or, you know, whatever it is, the activity. So
And there'll be
that's
hunting
when
and
you
fishing
have
layers to that too,
hunting and
right?
fishing layers, yeah, well, so there'll be here's where the fish are, and here's where the streams and whatever are, or the ponds, whatever they are, and maybe where how people access those fishing opportunities. And then we can say, okay, here's how that's gonna stay the same, be improved, be negatively impacted, we can evaluate what the impacts will be to those uses. So that's when we can really zoom in and get specific. We're not there yet, but this is kind of getting all that info so that we can start to zoom in.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that at some stage, people were going to be able to say, here's what you've impacted
And that's where
by.
we're asking,
Yeah.
tell us what you care about so that we can understand how we can make sure that gets incorporated in the plan.
And just to make sure that you're aware, there is no area that they got close to hunt. For fishing,
And how long has Bego been like that?
1992.
Since 1992.
Mark?
How about commercial activity like the gravel pit? How do you view those?
We don't have gravel, well, we have 2 gravel pits on a Bagog that we use to maintain our roads. Okay,
You
so
own them.
if we own them, we would use them to
How about
maintain our
somebody
roads.
else owns them?
If somebody else owns them, it's their land.
You don't try to influence
We don't have
their
any,
activities or anything like
it's
that?
not part of the refuge, it is not, it's the.
Or
By
if
putting, if it's
within the refuge?
if it's within the acquisition boundary, if it's a private owner, they have the right to do whatever they want.
Yeah,
Okay,
this doesn't-
that's our willing sell policy, that's basically how we look at it, one step, because, all right, I've been in this a long time, there's opportunities, you know, most of our refuges are complete. They gotta maybe 3/4 of the way complete because somebody either develops the land or they got a gravel pit or something like that. So if we get halfway, that doesn't mean we've lost, that's half of the conservation effort that was going. Okay, and if we can't, if we don't acquire everything within it, that's happens. I've seen many developments go on, and once they're developed, we actually have a system to take them back out of the acquisition. Because once they're developed, if there's a commercial gravel, roads, houses and stuff, we're not gonna buy. Okay, our priority is strictly undeveloped land. Unless unless we need like a headquarters right on a road, we want to put a visitor center there, something like that, we may buy a developed property there because we want to develop it for facilities, okay? But as far as the majority of land we own, it's undeveloped.
Well, people get nervous because the federal government's considerable, you know, if you're butting heads with them, you know, it's.
Did you get a frequently asked questions?
I did.
Okay.
Just to see it.
Yeah, good. Well, I think that'll address that issue because, yeah, there's no like regulatory impact on anybody who owns land within the acquisition boundary. They can't control anything you do or don't do unless you decide you want to sell or sell an easement, and then that's, you know, your decision and your process. So that's kind of the misperception.
I just pictured, you know, say there's a boundary line, this side's the wildlife refuge, this side is someone else's land.
Yeah.
And the wildlife refuge really doesn't like what doing what they like.
Well,
And
it's kind
say they both own to the middle of a stream or a river.
Yeah.
You know, that the boundary line's up the middle.
yeah, no,
I would think.
it's like anything, we have no more control over our neighbor than our neighbor has on us.
It does make people nervous.
Oh, I
Sure.
understand that.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
It could be expensive to defend yourself against the federal government.
Maybe, yeah.
I remember back when we were having this conversation, and this is probably 30 years ago now, about the National Scenic Byway. And that also had the kind of national label on it. And there were people who were nervous that if we designated this roadway as a National Scenic Byway, that the federal government would come in, and I think somebody said, well, I won't be able to paint my house purple. Or whatever, or the forest products people were afraid, well, they're talking about the view shed from the byway, and they were afraid like, well, over on Idle Lane, you can see, you know, 50 miles over there, and are they gonna be bothered because I'm doing a clear cut on the side of the hill? So there was a lot of that kind of concern about that. We ended up actually not having the byway continue to bypass Byron because the town of Byron was particularly concerned about that. But I think Joe can attest to the benefits of being designated as a National Scenic Byway and things like the restroom facilities in Aquasic. I mean, one of the things Paul has shared with me is that this designation actually makes available to you potentially some other sources of federal funding for things that you wouldn't be able to get. So we got the restrooms, we now have almost $500,000 grant to improve the gateways in Aquasic Village and Depot Street here in Rangeley Village. So, you know, there's other opportunities, but there is that fear, and we're aware of it, and I know we're gonna hear it.
Yeah.
We're just gonna have to try and see if we can calm those fears, I guess, with information.
And I think the best thing, if, you know, you're ever wanting me to come back and talk and have additional meetings and things like that, please let me know, because we'd be happy to do it. We'd rather talk up front than change everything at the end.
Yeah, and I'm doing a lot of like one-on-one meetings, so even if you have somebody who, you know, really wants to vent or to talk or to share or whatever, feel free to give them my contact info and I'll sit down and spend some time. We really want to unearth these concerns and issues up front. And some, if we can't address them, we can't address them, but most of the time, I think we will be able to incorporate whatever issues people are concerned about. We took more than whatever our allotted time was, I'm sure.
That's all right.
Most of your questions.
No, that's, it's all
Thank you.
about, people
That's great.
will view this afterwards, you know, it goes on our website, so.
Yes, well, good.
and we're,
So that's another way to reach people.
yeah,
Mhm.
definitely.
Appreciate that opportunity.
All right, any other questions?
Can you just reiterate the meeting dates, please? Which one, just for the public who watches it later?
All right, so on May 16th,
Yes.
there will be a meeting in Rangeley at the Masonic Lodge. And this will run 3:30 to 7:30 PM.
That's,
It is, yeah. And I think, I wasn't sure if it was entirely clear in that notice, and I think you mentioned it, he said, oh, 4 hours. So it's not a 4-hour meeting. This isn't like a presentation and questions and answers. It's an open house kind of. So we made it over that period of time so people could come whenever it was convenient. So it's just drop in, get some info, ask some questions, share some feedback.
Okay. And then University of Maine Farmington North Dining Hall on May 18th. And this will also run 3:30 to 7:30, kind of stop and talk.
Yep. You bet.
Any other questions for Paul or Nancy before we move on? Okay, thank you both for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate the time.
Really appreciate it. All right, so Ethan, we had bumped them up to adjustments to the agenda.
Yep.
All right, moving right
So
along.
you didn't miss anything. Oh, boy.
Well, that was gonna take what it took, no matter if it was at the beginning or the end.
That's right,
So might as well do that one first.
exactly.
I just didn't want to ask any questions because I didn't hear the opening.
Oh, you could ask.
I didn't have any. I was just trying to hear what. they were saying.
Yeah, there was some material that was sitting here waiting that may, answer some questions after the fact. So next up, number 4, review and approve meeting minutes. We've got May 1st, Board of Selectmen regular meeting.
Make a motion to approve the May 1st, 2023 regular board meeting for Board of Selectmen with any errors or correction.
It's Shelley's motion and Ethna seconds. Are there any suggested corrections? All those in favor? And that's unanimous. We have a nice assortment of boards and committees meeting minutes for your review. Moving on to consent items, number 7, we've got a request for appointment for the Rangeley Region Economic Opportunity Committee.
The motion to appoint Laura Reynolds to the Rangeley Region Economic Opportunity Committee.
Ethna's motion.
Term to expire, it's not on the paper. June 30th of 2025.
All right, thank you, Ethna. Ethna's motion
Second.
and Ethan seconds. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? That's unanimous. We've got the RSU 78 budget validation referendum.
Motion to counter authorize the budget validation referendum. Sorry, that was a question. Counter sign. So counter,
Okay.
okay. A motion to countersign the warrant and notice of election calling Rangers, calling regional school unit number 78 budget validation referendum.
Ethna's motion. And Ethan seconds. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Joe's requesting a carry forward of planning consultant fees. Joe, you've got some notes if you want to.
Yes, Madam Chair. So I didn't get around to putting the RFP together this year. I've done it recently. It's released. We've had some interest in it. A couple of folks have talked to it on it. I don't want to lose that momentum. I'm not a big fan of carry forwards, but knowing where the year has taken us, I'm requesting that the board vote to carry this forward, the $25,000 forward into fiscal year 23-24 for the purposes of hiring a planning consultant.
All right, need a motion.
Just a quick question.
Yes,
Is there a reason we're doing this separate from other carry forwards, which we would all typically do together?
I don't have any other carry forwards that I think I'm gonna bring. The board can wait until the last meeting in June if you like. I didn't want to forget.
Yep. Okay. I make a motion to authorize the carry forward to fiscal year 2023, the planning consultant fees in the amount of $25,000.
Bethany's motion.
Second.
And Ethan seconds. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor? That's unanimous. The airport general consultant agreement, looking for authorization for the town manager to sign. It was sent to us via email. And this would be with Stantec.
Correct. It would be, it's between the town and Stantec. Beginning date, May 1, 20, that's retroactive, May 1, 2023, end date, April 30, 2028. It has been reviewed by Steve Langsdorff, and he's comfortable with it. It covers engineering and planning services. I think we only have one actual planning item on the docket, which is related to the obstruction removal of the trees there on 32N. The rest of it is engineering. They had to go out separately as engineering and planning RFPs, but the agreement, it's okay to have planning and engineering together. So
Mhm.
it's a lengthy document. There's a lot of FAA language that makes up the latter part of it. The beginning part talks about how the town and Stantec will talk about coming to terms for projects. That's laid out in here. How we will negotiate for costs or come to costs.
Yes.
So sorry, could somebody remind me when we saw these RFPs? I'm drawing a complete blank.
That would have been prior, yeah. It would have been 3 years ago.
Now, the airport commission, we did this, I don't remember the date, this winter. And
Okay.
the RFPs went out in December. Airport commission did the screening, made a decision.
January.
Yeah. I think
Okay.
January-ish.
That's what I thought, but I could, for the life of me. I could not remember.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I obviously don't recall. Michelle?
And it's been approved by the airport commission.
The consultant has been selected, yes, by the airport commission.
Yes, Mark.
It turned out that these obstruction trees that resulted from the runway extension on the Loon Lake end. We had a contract with Stantec to be the airport consultant, but those items and some other ones that are in the capital improvement plan, they weren't, it wasn't covered in the initial agreement that we had with them. So Joe sent out a new RFP that covered those services. I think you got 3 responses,
At least 3.
3 or 4.
There might have been 4.
right? Different airport consultants, and the airport commission voted to go with Stantec. And that was back right after the first of the year.
Okay.
And that's
And that was
typically,
on the unanimous vote at the airport commission.
and that's typically how this particular contract is decided, the airport commission, so they don't just give this board
We're just an
suggestion.
advisory board.
Yeah, I thought you were. So you were an advisory board who voted
So
for these,
we-
then
we-
came to us.
That's,
Right.
we voted to forward it to you folks. You folks make the decision.
Right. Actually, Madam Chair, the airport commission is advisory to the town manager.
Okay.
I in turn brought it to the board of selectmen on February 6th of this year.
Mhm.
And the board voted. The motion. Under new business, airport consultant voted 302 to approve Stantec for airport engineering, and the separate motion approve Stantec for airport planning. 302 Thompson Schaefer absent.
That's why I
That's why-
can't
That's why you
remember.
can't
Yeah,
recall.
that's what-
That's why I can't
And,
remember.
and any, you know, and
Well, and the fact that it happened in February and it's now May 15th, I mean, that might have something to do with it
might
too.
have something to do with it.
There was some delay, Madam Chair, in actually getting the paperwork put together on the state end. The DOT prepares these documents,
Yeah.
and the our engineer, our consultant was attempting to get those. And they just got them, as I understand it, a couple weeks ago. So as soon as they had them, they got it to us. I had one edit, and then Langsdorff didn't have any, but there was that review process administratively. And
Yeah.
this is your first meeting since I've had a chance to look at it. By the way, before I forget, I don't think I have it in your notes anywhere, I'm going to meet with our consultant and the DOT next Monday, kind of a preliminary CIP meeting. And I'll bring that stuff back to the airport commission when they meet again. I'm not gonna agree to anything on the 22nd, but that's when we're gonna scope
Mhm.
upcoming projects. It's laid out for 8 years. One of the things that's on my mind is striping. As we talked about, I think one of our last
Yeah, we
meetings, there's some conversation about whether that is eligible for FAA funding or if it's a local expense. So we have one person I've talked to who says it's one way, and then the other person said, no, it's recently changed. So that's one of the things I want to focus on during that meeting. And then the other thing is, I've had some feedback on the trees, the 32M trees, from some pilots over the last year, asking if we can expedite that process. So I'm gonna see if there's a way we can possibly move that along.
Mhm.
So that's it. Those are really the only things on my mind that I would change on that
Mhm.
CIP. And they're really not changes, they're just clarifications or speeding up certain things.
Shelley?
So the pilots understand it's not an easy process, right? Do they understand that it's not something you can just do? You just can't take a chainsaw over there and cut someone else's tree down.
I've explained that a few times,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah.
But I also understand it's now been a year and, you know, I understand the frustration. Maybe there's a way we can,
Yeah.
change it so it's a little quicker. It is a process.
Mhm.
And so how do you, so with that, how do you get that process? So, I mean, trees grow. It's not gonna end.
Right. Well,
We lost that buffer. So when they extended that runway
yes,
down to the edge of our property,
Yeah.
there went the buffer, you know, with abutting trees growing, doing their thing.
Yeah.
And now it's immediately affecting the runway because we're right at the end of our property.
right. And it probably wasn't, so I asked that question, I don't want to go too far in the weeds, but I asked that question, why did this not come up before? But it wasn't an obstruction at that time. The trees had grown tall enough.
Yeah, but we're paying engineers like tons of money to do this for us.
Yeah.
but-
Anyway.
Sorry.
No, it's, Mark?
Valid
One of the
conversation.
reasons it's a lengthy process is because it hasn't even been identified yet. If those trees are on multiple properties or one property and who the owners are, you know, there could be several sets of negotiations with different landowners. So, you know, the first thing is to find out where whose property these
Yeah.
obstructions are located on.
Yeah, and that's the reason why Joe had to put this out for for an RFP, because it wasn't a part of the original plan.
It wasn't, that's
And
correct.
that's so that when the FAA, when you have a new project that doesn't fall within
Yeah.
the current scope, then you've got to put that out, which is why this is, we voted in Stantec. I think it was 3 years ago, but now we've got this little side project that wasn't identified. So anyway, here we are, looking for
A motion.
a motion for
A
the.
motion to authorize the town manager to sign the airport general consultant agreement between Stan Tech and the town of Rangeley for the term of May 1st, 2023 to April 30th of 2028.
After's motion
Second.
and Ethan seconds. Are there any further questions or discussion? All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Ratify and sign CBA amendment dated March 22nd, 2023.
So, Madam Chair, that document is not in your packets.
Okay.
I do have it. It's signed by the union. I got that this afternoon. I have that document. The union folks prefer originals. So originally I was thinking we could do this and then scan it back. So if the board votes to ratify and sign individually, once I get the originals in the mail, the originals are gonna come up in the mail. Annalise gonna send them up. She has them. Or our copies. of them. She's gonna send them up. So when they come, if you want to vote to sign them individually, we can give them to them. We have a negotiating meeting coming up, I think, next week. We can hand it back to them. That would be my recommendation. And this is for the Public Works Police unit. The date of signing, the date that this was tentatively agreed to was March 22nd. The date of the union signing it is 5/12/23.
All right, so we don't, so there aren't originals in front of us to sign, so this would be.
Right, I don't have
Yes.
the originals yet. I just have a scanned copy.
And the Board of Selectmen reviewed this. We would have reviewed this in one of our executive sessions in March.
Correct.
It doesn't even have a title. Teamsters local something, something number. I know, sorry, I just want to make sure that
That's
it's
all right.
with now more than one existing.
Shelley?
So if was that a final approval or was it still a negotiation back and forth? I mean, I would honestly like to see it first before I vote on it. To make sure it's exactly what we did.
Are these several copies of the same thing?
Yeah, that's staple might be a little. So,
And name's spelled wrong. The last one. My name's spelled wrong.
They allow hand correction, that's, the original's already been drafted and signed. I don't know what the chances are of getting someone's name corrected.
Got me, nothing's right.
I know.
They defied autocorrect.
Maybe they concentrated so hard on those two.
That's exactly what happened. Shalili.
Yeah, because that is the two easiest things.
All right, any, I didn't note any discrepancies.
So to ask this question, we need the title of this union.
I found it on the back, it's Teamsters Local 340.
It's-
It's above their signatures. Because that is not what the other one falls under, right? Because that's not what the other one falls under.
They're the
right?
same union. This is the Public Works and Police Union.
So
Okay. This one has a name. I've seen it on the front of the copies.
Well, they've got the title here, it's the collective bargaining agreement, so it's,
Right, but we're working on two
I
different
know.
collective bargaining
I know.
agreements.
you can qualify, I mean,
Okay.
you could qualify it with the,
Did you want these back, Joe?
Yes, please.
The Teamsters, yeah, the Teamsters Local 340, Public Works Police Unit, collective bargaining agreement.
all right, I'll give it a shot. Make motion to ratify and sign the CBA amendment dated March 22nd, 2023 between the Town of Rangeley and the Teamsters Local 340, Rangeley Public Works and Police Department.
That's Ethan's motion
Second.
and Ethna seconds. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? And that's unanimous. All right, let's send that back down.
Pass those back to Joe, please.
Thank you, Joe, for bringing
You're
those.
welcome, Madam Chair. I will inform you when the originals arrive, so that
Okay.
let board members know they're ready to sign.
Oh, shoot, did that need to be part of the motion that we would come in individually and sign and it would not be signed in public? At a public meeting? Is it good? That's how it's going.
So amended.
Okay.
I think the intent was clear. That's how
Okay.
you're going to proceed.
Okay. We don't have any correspondence. Moving on to old business, we've got the Maine DEP PFAS testing. So Joe, looks like we got a letter here.
Yes, Madam Chair, this is purely informational.
Yeah,
Just wanted, DEP wanted us to be aware, they gave a courtesy call and had sent the letter out. Folks within the, I think within 1,000 feet, he said, of the septic lay down or spreading area at the plant. And then there's another plant location over by the airport somewhere. He said Taylor Road. I don't know if the town spread there a long time ago. I asked if he had any records on that. He said he didn't have anything back to 80 or something, so maybe it was before that. But this is just informational that there'll be, the DEP or consultants of the DEP will be in touch with homeowners. They'll be on municipal property, taking samples and just kind of looking around, testing well water.
Mark?
I have information on that back when Frenchy Google Mount was in charge of the sewer plant, but prior to Chick Hill, I did some consulting work for them, and it had to do with the land up at the airport and also some fields that were part of the mining company land in by Link Wilbur's stuff. And septic sludge was spread there on a regular basis. I did the initial soil samples there that Frenchie had submitted to University of Maine at Orono and had them analyzed to make sure they could handle it. And it's this spring, my wife was trying to declutter some of the space there, and she put out a Rangeley Mining Company folder, and I looked in it and I actually had some hand-drawn maps of where my test pits were and where those fields lie. If you would like to have that information, I could drop that off someday.
Sure, if you'd like to, I'll share it with VP. I'll
Okay.
keep it on file here, but I'll let them know we have it.
Because I really don't have any use for it.
So
If
that's,
she didn't shred it, I'll bring.
so is it their intent to test that or?
They're going to test that area, yes, within 1,000 feet of that. They're testing drinking water wells, and they're gonna do some sort of samples. So,
That's Rangeley North subdivision, correct?
Yeah, I don't know, yeah, it's probably, it's the same land base, where, how that Rangeley North is divided up and where these fields were, I've
Yeah.
never looked at it close enough to see what the overlap is or what they have in common, but that's why I'm thinking maybe I'll just bring the folder, and
Yeah,
give it to Joe, and he can see if there's anything useful in it or not.
sure.
Okay.
All right, so for our information, thank you, Joe. Continuing under old business, attainable housing. It is recommended that we schedule a workshop with Matt Tier and the Genesis Fund. So Joe, sounds like, discussions continued.
yes, Madam Chair, Matt has come to the Economic Opportunity Committee. We met with them in person here a little while back, a couple weeks ago. And I believe they voted to recommend to you that you meet with him. They didn't vote, they strongly encouraged it. To meet with Matt and the Genesis Fund. So the Genesis Fund partners with Misha. And I think that group, the elected folks, Matt and Misha of the Genesis Fund, would be good to get in a room and talk about the project. Matt, this is public information, is applying for permitting for the Cross Street project. For a while, it was 10 acres, now it's back down to 5. And he seems very interested in building there. He's committed now. He's got some financial skin in the game, so he's going to move forward. But he's still very interested in talking about workforce housing. So I think it would be, and so does the Economic Opportunity. He thinks it's a good idea to talk about the project and his goals and our goals in a non-binding format at this point, just to get together and talk about it. The committee is also talking about other ways to enhance attainable workforce housing too. There are some other things on the agenda, on their agenda, but this is a good opportunity. And the question really is, would you like to have it be a freestanding workshop or a workshop in the sense that it would be an agenda item, kind of like what happened here tonight? Something to think about.
So, yeah, so freestanding workshop might get more in attendance if they know they're here to, for a specific topic.
Mhm.
So maybe, 5 o'clock prior to a future meeting, or just is,
I think that's a good idea because it gives it a limit,
right,
just because.
This isn't the same group that brought us plans before, correct?
Yeah, Matt has shared some concepts with the town publicly. I think he's changed the scope just a little bit.
Yes, Sharon.
And isn't it now he's planning on doing some 2 units? So this plan changes too.
I think some of those are 2 units, I'm not sure. Again, the plan is 20 overall. 6 2-unit buildings. And then
I thought he
8
said 14.
Yeah, I think it's 14 buildings total, but
14 dwelling units with
Right.
mixed zones. Single family and duplex.
20 units in all.
Yeah. Condominium style approach.
right, and just to be clear, Madam Chair, the intent of Matt's workshop with the board is more about the partnership of trying to work out some attainable housing goals. He'll be meeting separately with the planning board for the
Oh,
the
okay.
land
Right,
use
yeah.
and,
Right.
yeah,
It has to.
right. But he's interested in talking about how the town might partner with Main State Housing Authority and Matt
Oh,
and his
so
partner.
so he wants a financial meeting then, not,
Kind of, yeah.
okay, that kind of changes what I thought, yeah, what I thought
does.
purpose was, so it would be appropriate for an agenda item then. Yeah, I mean, if he's looking for, yeah, a specific discussion with the board, then yeah, it should be an agenda
Mhm.
item. If it's not, public education on, et cetera. If he wants to talk money and numbers and
There you
then,
go.
yeah, that's different. Okay. I guess find out when they're,
He's looking to move in the next 2 or 3 months. We'd like to
so does he
know what
want,
he's doing. So if,
so does he want to be a part of our next meeting's agenda?
possibly, I don't know for sure. If I gave him a couple of options, the 5th and sometime in July, maybe. 5th of June, I
Yeah.
think is the next meeting.
Whatever.
Where are through budget? I mean, if he's looking for a monetary commitment from us.
Yeah, maybe it's TIF funds.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I don't think he's looking for money. That probably a big phrase. I don't think he's looking for money in the next 2 or 3 months. I think he's looking to figure out what does his project look like in the next 2 or 3 months. Is it all market rate or is it market rate mixed with some attainable housing? I don't think he's gonna need the money. Right? And it may turn out that there's some, I think it's a conversation we need to have with him and
With him in the room and, okay,
Yeah, because I don't think you can fit both market with mainstay housing in between, maybe because of the condo thing. I also saw in a couple of our newsletters about TIP district revenues to be used to assist workforce in low to moderate income housing projects. And it looks like they're changing that, trying to change that on the state level. It was in both of our newsletter. It was reference to that. So does that mean that our documents that we have filed for our TIF, if the state changes something, we would revert to being able to use those funds for that? Or would we have to do an amendment
I think we have to do an amendment.
to
Yeah.
copy what the state is saying that we can?
I
Okay,
think so.
I'm just
I'd have to
curious.
read that language to see what,
Right.
there may be
right,
instructions.
it's nothing
in there, but-
concrete yet, but I'm just saying, like, it's been, like,
Mhm.
it's being heavily discussed.
yeah, I mean, because this may give folks purpose to start a TIF district with, this new money. All right, so I guess we'll stay tuned and see them on the agenda.
If it's an agenda item, I'll just invite. him to
Yeah,
the meeting.
I don't see. Yeah, if it's a specific discussion with the board, this will be on the agenda. Page 2, new business. Rangeley and MDC affiliate information. So main downtown center. Call for applications. I struggle to find the benefit of this. I don't. I mean, it looks like it's a labor, you know, we'll get, you know, we'll be um, you know, if we become a member, I guess I don't understand why we would need it. What would we use it for?
Very good question. And I was of a similar mindset when I sat down with Ann and Andy. And after that meeting, I said, geez, that's a pretty good resource. What these folks do statewide is they help towns with downtowns. Kind of network is the biggest thing, but share resources and help them kind of keep their momentum with their downtown plans, with their goals. And they have folks that specialize in that on staff. You know, it is a process. That's why I kind of wanted to bring it to you before I signed up for it. The economic opportunity folks were in favor of it, especially when they heard about the fact that it's a $750 annual fee. It's a nominal amount of money to join up. But they have a 4-point approach, which I'm sure you've read. You know, it helps everyone work toward the same revitalization goals, maximizes involvement, designs, preserves, and protects historic buildings, which is something that I know we talked about. Promotion, it attracts visitors and residents. We do pretty well with that, but never hurts to have some outside input into that. And then economic vitality stimulates business development and helps strengthen the downtown economic base through business potential improvement. That's something I don't have a strong suit in, number 4, so it'd be good to have you know, some help. That particular one. Networking is the biggest part of it for me, and knowing what's working in other places and what we might be able to use here. So I think for the $750 participation fee, we are expected to, I think, go to a seminar or an annual party or something like that. I think it's worth a shot.
Do you have time for this? It's
It's a very good question.
I,
As far as somebody going to the annual party, I think what I said was, you know, you could delegate somebody or somebody from the committee may want to participate in that. I think
is AvCog already a resource for us? With down, you know, we've got the, you know, the downtown, I mean, we're already well down the downtown revitalization road. And, you know, Aquasic's getting, you know, their own study. I guess I just don't want to spread you too thin here with this list of items they want if I mean, that's just my initial feedback. I mean, subject to change my mind at any time. I mean, there are 14 communities. I'm surprised there aren't more. That's on the first page.
My knee-jerk reaction to reading the note was how many organizations we're already a member of, and how the amount of ideas that we have with all of our local committees, how hard it is to get implemented. So I wasn't sure having more ideas been needed.
Mhm.
But my thought is that this would help with the implementation by organizing some of those efforts and knowing, you know, learning how other folks are approaching it.
Are you, do you know other peers that are affiliated with this that you've spoken to and they were like, geez, Joe, this is gonna help you, or is this just someone reached out from the organization itself?
It's mainly based on my meeting with, you know, with Ann. And when actually, it was also recommended by Matt Drost at Maine DOT. He actually initially pointed out to me that this would be a good organization for the town.
Yep, Shelley.
Do they help get set up for like more grants and things like that?
It could be helpful with that, with leveraging funds. Yep. Which I mean, we're doing pretty good with this, but, you know, there are other things that, you know, I need to focus on. This may help us, help the committee.
So.
Yeah, go ahead.
Mark has a question first.
Mark?
Is this completely different from like that main service center thing that we belong to? That where Rangeley is like a hub for, this provides the services for the surrounding communities is, are there any similarities between these two things, or they have different goals?
They are somewhat similar. I don't know if that program that you're referring to is still active.
I thought the selectmen just appointed you and Tracy to it sometime in the last 6 months. So,
Oh, you're talking about the AVCOG, or the MMA what do we call it, service center, yeah.
it's a service center designation. It's a statewide thing, and it goes from the smallest town, I think, had like, I think Ranger was one of the smallest, like 1,000 people, and it goes up to some towns that have like 3,500. So, remember that?
Yeah, I'm involved in that. That typically is primarily legislative updates. That's mostly what I gleaned from that.
Okay, I didn't know if they actually met, you know, had meetings and things like that.
Occasionally.
I really didn't know just what everything there was that went with it. Sorry if that question was a distraction. I
No,
was trying to
it's fine.
sort things out.
You have a question?
So if we try it to see what it's like, can we cancel it next year if it doesn't work out?
I believe, yes, we can.
If it's not doing what you think?
Well, it says return a signed letter of agreement every 2 years. Conduct a goal setting session with MDC every 3 years. Complete an annual reporting form. Participate in at least 4 MDC offered or supported trainings per year. Is that what you're thinking, Joe, would be, you know, the biggest benefit is that information?
Well, I think that's useful. But I think the program itself would be useful so that there's some more structure to our downtown program. We have a plan. And, you know, I'm actively interested and involved in it, so is the committee. But I guess my question is, are you happy with the pace we're going at? If you're happy with the way things are going, then let's not worry about this.
My concern is the number of projects that would be going on at the same time and the money involved. So I would certainly probably want to step back and take a look at, you know, all right, what, you know, what are we looking at for, and, you know, that kind of leads us back to the comprehensive plan and what's been struck off the list. But yeah, you know, we've got engineering for Quasic, we've got engineering for Main Street, we've got, you know, sewer needs, we've got, I guess I just, if you want to give it a try, I just don't want to be forced to, all right, you know, we want to see you
Then
moving
you're gonna do
forward.
Main Street.
Yeah, we
just
want to see you
finished the
moving
clock,
forward in
right?
2 years with your downtown revitalization. I just think if there are grants available to, you know, tack this incrementally, that might be helpful.
I could invite Ann or someone to talk with you for 10 or 15 minutes if you like during the meeting. Or I can put a pin in this.
For me, if one board member here feels strongly that this is gonna be helpful for more information we have, and what we just talked about here, I would gladly go along and support it, but I haven't heard one yet.
I think it would be nice if she came and presented like she presented to you, to actually be able to answer the questions about the benefits of being a part of this.
The benefits and the differences in the programs that we already
I agree with
participate in.
Mhm.
The benefits and the differences. What's different from this to AvCog to all the other resources we're already paying out our nose to be members and active participants of. On a side note, who would be the 10 active engaged individuals? Where is that name coming from? Or where is that group of engaged individuals coming from? Is that going to be a collective of board members? Is that going to be you know what I mean, of different committees and boards and?
Right.
Yeah.
And are we committing more, are we needing to commit more people? What was one of the things that I saw? That we have to
Sorry, that
hire
was kind of a side, that was a.
No.
volunteers.
I think Shelley's right, what Evelyn was just asking out loud. Obviously,
I mean, the money.
Joe's got more information than we do
Yeah.
to actually put this in front of us, so I think what Shelley said about having them come here, then probably that's what we have to do.
Can zoom in and.
I mean, because $750 annually is not a huge cost to invest in our downtown, if it's investing in our downtown.
Right.
If it's just something else, we're gonna sit and let somebody roll in suggestions and.
Right, it's not the
And
number,
never-
it's not the money part.
It's not the
No,
money
it's got
part,
nothing to
it's-
do with the money.
It's the involvement and the time, and it's like, all right, what do we get out of this?
Yep, I agree.
And then the 10
We
people.
put it out to Quasic, right?
And
We
10
put it
people,
out
are
to
we
them
committing
to
10 people
decide
from?
and do the questionnaire with the surveys and stuff like that.
And
Say that again?
So like with Quasic, we've put it out for the survey and stuff like that for everyone to get back their feedback and things like that. So is this a group that puts those together and presents something, or is this, I mean, it's just more questions. I mean, we're already in the motion for our downtown. Basically, we have 2 huge projects coming up. We have a Quasic, and then even bigger is downtown. So it's just a matter of if we start this with them and our timeline is past the 2 years that we signed a contract with, how does that play out?
Mhm.
Like Cindy said, we don't want to do 2 projects at the same time, because that's gonna be pretty expensive, but.
All right, so we'll look forward to discussing the MDF Main Downtown Center program with one of their folks. We've already discussed the High Peaks Wildlife Refuge, so next up is the RSU 78, 23, 24 local allocations. So, for Rangeley, the proposed school budget, our share is $3,955,043.98, an increase of $330,748.90. Questions? Town manager report. All the department head updates are in. The police chief and fire chief. Under calendar, absentee ballots were available beginning May 12th. Yeah, you can. And June 13th is the town meeting secret ballot voting from 8 AM to 8 PM, correct, Joe?
That is correct.
All right. Other business, anything else, Joe?
We got the decals off the police cruiser, probably saw that on the way in. Chief is in the process of getting pictures taken, so we get that posted. We meet with the dock, fence company at the dock last week, so I'm awaiting that quote. Transfer station hours I already knew about, we're back to working Sundays, half day Sundays this week. Thank you to Tracy and all the folks that worked on the cleanup there last weekend, went well.
Yeah.
Thank you to everyone else, doing a good job, especially public works folks are doing great, filling the gaps. The Clark Street vacant right now, they've been very helpful. The folks at the front end have been very helpful too. It is getting to be busy time with the phones ringing.
Sure. Shelley?
I just saw like there's 2 garbage bags and something else that's just on this side of the line. I didn't know if that was some part of the pickup that got left. It's still there.
Where is it?
So it is just past the line when you're heading towards Sandy River. It's like there's 2
Same on
bags that are on
Oh,
the side.
two.
of
Same with the, it's in the sanitation.
It's in Range's location.
It might be, I'm not sure, but I saw them. Yeah, there's a few around on the outskirts. I'm not sure what
Okay.
town they're in, but. I don't think people know they're-
Okay, we can keep an eye on that.
Hmm.
We'll check on that.
Thank you, Joe.
Yep.
Any other questions under town manager report? Select board communication. Ethna,
None.
Ethan. Shelley,
So I am not going to be in Rangeley from June 14th to June 22nd.
six,
Gotta do
four.
something fun.
She's gonna be in Hawaii.
I'm going to Hawaii.
Good for what?
Yep.
Good for you. Wow.
Going to a wedding.
All right.
And my son just found out, I thought he was in it, and he just found out for sure that he is in the wedding. so-
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
Excellent.
June 14th to the 22nd.
June 22nd. I fly in the 21st. I don't even know if it's in the morning or night because it's like 6 hours difference and I don't know where I'll be sleeping.
Yeah.
And your husband's not going with you. I see, Mr. If
Yeah.
if it's not in Franklin County, I don't.
Yeah, exactly right. So he's gonna be bouncing back between my house and Hunter's house, taking care of our cats.
I'm excited.
Okay,
That's how many times I've heard him say that. It's not in Franklin County. I don't either.
that's right. Yeah.
So the other thing I have is that I got an email notification from the chamber that they scheduled a Board of Selectmen candidates night for June 7th at the theater from 6 to 8 p.m. June 7th at the theater. We do have an executive session on the agenda. However, we don't have all the board members present. Joe is, so we'll go over the town manager contract. You could schedule an executive session for the next meeting, Joe. Sam will be back. Shelley will not have left yet. So would you like us to keep that information? Okay, so keep your mail envelopes, thank you. And be ready for discussion at our June meeting. Need a motion to adjourn.
Someone.
Ethna's motion. Ethan seconds. All those in favor? And that's unanimous.
One of these days, I'm just gonna pose it for fun.